Hello again and welcome back to the Bible Project podcast. And we've reached the closing part of Genesis chapter 5, the last few verses covering verses 25 to the first part of verse 29. I'd remind you that transcripts for all these podcasts, all these messages, is available on any audio version of the podcast that you download either from Buzzsprout or through your app or app store. Today we're picking up and concluding on that story of the generations that ran in the list of names from Methuselah through to Noah. Let me just remind you by reading verses from chapter 5, verses 25 to 28, which says this: When Methuselah had lived 187 years, he became the father of Lamech. And he became the father of Lamech, and Methuselah lived 782 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Methuselah lived a total of 969 years, and then he died. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he had a son, and he named him Noah. So just 2 generations later, Lamech has a son and names him Noah. And it is during the life of Noah that the flood comes, and God uses Noah to allow a small faithful remnant to escape this great judgment. Let me pause for a moment and try and make some application to our lives, the lives we live today, and to sum up these chapters detailing this family line of the generations from Adam to Noah, contained in what is called the line of Seth. The list itself simply shows that men lived, married, had children, and died. But during that time, one outstanding man named Enoch is declared to have walked with God, and God did what we translated him. God called him home without him having to experience physical death. But let me remind you what I think the main point of Genesis chapter 5 is. We get to see all these people who follow the line of Seth. They call on the Lord and they live long lives, and the family line is therefore preserved. Nevertheless, we do see that every single one of them eventually die. You cannot read this chapter without seeing it again and again. And he died, and he died, and he died over and over again. So the wages of the sin of Adam were indeed death. However, there was this exception, an outstanding individual named Enoch who did not die. Enoch being taken by God indicates that God could not only choose to conquer death in the life of an individual, but that there could be life after death as well. Enoch is an outstanding individual because in his time he didn't live like other men and women who lived during that time. We are told in the phrases, he walked with God, he walked with the Lord, and the good news is that you or I can also choose to walk like Enoch. Let me finish this section on chapter 5 by telling you that we can all potentially live like Enoch and walk with God. And to do that, firstly, you've got to walk in the same direction of God. But then how do you know the direction that God wants in your life? Well, the answer to that primarily comes from the scriptures, the Bible, the words of Jesus himself. Secondly, you need to talk with the Lord. Walking with the Lord suggests a close intimacy, and if you're going to walk with the Lord and go the way of the Lord, you need to know not only what his word says, but you need to be in communication with him, to talk with him. And this, of course, is a reference to prayer. But one final observation I believe is worth making is that it doesn't say Enoch was perfect. It doesn't say he was without sin. It just says he walked with the Lord and that the Lord was pleased with him. Now, walking implies to me that you still might occasionally stumble. Well, let me tell you, if you're walking with the Lord and you do stumble, you can still get up and continue walking and talking with the Lord. J. Vernon McGee, a great American theologian and Bible teacher, once wrote a famous study booklet about this character Enoch, and I'd like to close by reading just a short paragraph from it. I think it would be a good way to end today's podcast. McGee says this: Perhaps every day the Lord and Enoch took a walk together, and they enjoyed each other's company so much that the walks got longer and longer, and finally one day, after a long walk together, God said to Enoch, "You know, you're closer to my house than yours. Why don't you come home with me?" Maybe God said to Enoch, "Instead of walking all the way back to your place, why not come home to the Lord's house instead?" So God took Enoch home to his house that day. That's a beautiful, poetic way of describing the translation of Enoch. The most outstanding people are those who walk with the Lord. They're those who speak with him, and those who speak accurately for him. Those who speak with him by knowing his word, and those who speak accurately for him by knowing his word. And these are the people that God is pleased with. And maybe, just maybe, for some of those individuals, he's able to take them home earlier than perhaps you and I would want. Take them home to be with him. What a wonderful perspective that can give us on both our lives and the lives of other Christian believers that we love. And a wonderful perspective on the life we can all share in the life to come. Okay everyone, that's it for this time. Thank you for joining me. Now the place to go to connect to this and any other ministries I'm involved in is the podcast notes section of the audio podcast on the Buzzsprout website, or by looking in the episode notes section on whatever app provider you use. Within that you'll not only find the transcript of each talk, but you'll also find links to all the ministries and the way to connect with us, including the Facebook page, my YouTube channel, and links both to this, the daily podcast, and the Living in Faith Everyday podcast, which is a weekly roundup of all the various Bible study and talks that I'm doing over the period of the preceding week. You'll also find links there to my SoundCloud and my Bandcamp page, where I create the background music and the sound design of these podcasts. But with that, all I'd like to say is thank you for joining me, and I hope to join with you again very soon.